So a few months ago for an RA gift, I was given something awesome. It was a gift from Braden, and it was a red Lego race car. He gave me the whole set, and let me tell you, look, when I got this, I was like, that's cool, because like I haven't played with Legos since I was like 8 years old, and so I was like, you know, I want to have, this will be fun, right? And so when I got it, I'm like, you know, I don't want to put it together yet, because I'm going to have to move back to Pennsylvania and back to South Carolina. I don't want to break it or lose anything in the process, so I'm just going to hold off. But one day during the summer, I got a little bored, and I was looking around my room, and I saw that box just kind of sitting on a shelf, and I'm like, you know, today's the day. Let's do that. Let's do it now, right? Has anyone ever put together a Lego set before? Okay, so maybe you know what I'm talking about when I say that building this red Lego car was some of the most fun I've had in probably ever. I don't know exactly how to explain it, but I am not joking. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like the male caveman brain that just enjoys just like, something like that. I don't know what it is. Like you get off your phone, you just go piece by piece by piece, and eventually becomes a car. And I think that's awesome. Like I had such a great time. I had so much fun doing this. But when I got the Lego set, there's a few things that come with it, right? So first off, you have the box with the cool picture, right? I don't know if you've seen it. It's usually a little Photoshop, got some cool designs. But it has basically what you're going to build on it. For me, it was a red Lego race car. Pretty cool one. I have it in my room right now. And so you have like the really cool picture on the box so that you know, okay, I'm going to put these random pieces together. And when it's all said and done, when it all comes together, it's going to look like that. And as you're building it, as you're putting it together, the entire time, you can always look at that box for a reference of what it's going to look like in the end. Right? We following so far? And then inside of that box, there's two things. What comes inside of a Lego box? Two things. Shout them out if you know it. The Legos, right? And the instruction manual. Sometimes stickers if you get lucky. One of the cool ones, right? Mine had a ton. I didn't put them on because I have too shaky of hands. But anyway, I thought it was awesome because first off, I had the box, right? So I could always see how it turned out to be. But then the second part that was really cool, I had the manual, as we said, the instruction manual. And what that was is it said exactly when and where to put all of the pieces, right? And so I was never like lost or confused, or I never didn't know exactly what to do to get to a car, because I could always refer to the manual and say, okay, you got to put this Lego piece here and this Lego piece here. Eventually, it'll turn into this. Cool, right? And there were kind of some sections where I was building it, and I put one piece here, and one piece here, and one piece here, and I was like, what on earth is this? I'm like, how does this fit into a car, right? And I was so lost, and I was confused. And what I could do is I could just take the manual, and I could flip 2, 3, 4, 6, 8 pages forward, and I could see, wait a second. So these pieces right here, eventually I'm going to add this here, and add this here, and add this here, and then eventually this section is going to go on this part of the car, and it's all going to work out. So whenever I was kind of lost or confused as I was building this Lego set, I always had the manual to refer to not only tell me what to do and when to put what pieces where, but also if I ever got lost or confused or I'm like, why on earth am I doing this? I could just flip ahead and I could see, okay, here's why. Makes sense. Cool, right? Are we following so far? We good? So as I was putting this together, it very, very slowly started to become a car. And and I'm going piece by piece by piece. And as I'm doing this, I realized something. I was like, you know, life is no Lego set at all. You might be saying like, Jared, what on earth are you talking about? Let me explain. Two parts to it. First off, in life, you don't get the cool box with the cool picture on it, right? Because in life, it's like with a Lego set, you know exactly what you're trying to build. You know exactly like here's what the end product looks like. But you don't get that cool box in life. You know what you get is other people's opinions of what your cool box should look like. I mean, it starts when you're 5 years old. You don't even know how to use scissors correctly. And people are like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's like, I don't know. I just learned how to talk 2 years ago. You expect me to find my whole career? I got 80 summers left. I don't need to know now, right? And so we don't have the cool box. Sometimes when we're going through life, we don't know exactly what we're trying to get to. We don't have a vision of what we want all of our pieces to look like when they're all put together, right? Second part, also, I don't know if you face this reality, but I have. I realize we don't get an instruction manual either. See, when you're building a Lego set, it says put this piece here, put this piece here, put this piece here, and eventually it becomes a car. In life, it feels like I put this piece here and this piece here, and I get like a bowl of cereal, right? And I don't know what's going on at all, right? So, because like, you know what I mean? Where it's like, There's nothing to tell you, here's what you do here, here's what you do here, and then you're going to do this. Like, okay, should I date this person or this person? I don't know. Right? Go to the Bible. Where does it say date this person? It doesn't say that in the Bible. All right, like, or it's like, okay, you should move here and then get this job, and 3 months later you're actually going to get promoted, and then there's no instruction manual to life. And so I realized that life, it's not a Lego set. In fact, sometimes in life, there will be seasons where you'll be going through something. You'll be kind of trying to put together the pieces, whatever pieces you can find, because sometimes we're not even given all the pieces in life. And you might even find yourself. You remember when I said there were times I got kind of confused or stuck and I could just flip ahead in the instruction manual? Sometimes in life you don't get that either. Sometimes you go through a season. Maybe it's a season of loss or failure or someone leaves you. You can't just flip ahead and find out why. You can't flip ahead and see where does this season fit into the bigger picture. And so as I put this together, I realized that life is not a Lego set. If it was a Lego set, we'd have an instruction manual, and then we would never have to ask the question, why? Has anyone ever asked that question, why, before? Has anyone ever been in a position where you're just wondering, why is this happening to me? Getting some head nods. I know it's hot in here. It's all right. I'll be quick. Don't worry. Only 2 hours. So with that, how about we talk about a character in the Bible who had to face that question of why, definitely more than he wanted to. Has anyone ever heard the story of Joseph in the Bible? Talking Old Testament, late Genesis. We got the story of Joseph. Some people know him. I think Gen Z calls him dripped out Joseph. Don't ask me why. Well, some of you guys may know him from Sunday school as Joseph. He had the... No, just kidding. Yeah, that's right. See, it was Joseph, and he had the coat of many colors. And so he's introduced in Genesis 37, and it's in verse 3 that it said that his father loved him. His brothers, not so much. I'm sure that doesn't matter too much. I'm sure that won't come back in the story, right? So his brothers, they don't like him. His father loves him, though. And so his father's like, hey, Joseph, you're my favorite son. I want to give you, it's called in the NIV, an ornate robe. I don't know what that means. Maybe it had many colors. That's what they told me in Sunday school, so I'm inclined to believe Miss Susie. Okay? Thanks for that. But right, so Joseph is given this great robe in verse 3 and 4. And then in verse 5, Joseph gets something else. Does anyone know what Joseph gets? A dream. And with that, let me go ahead and open up the word from Genesis 37, verse 5. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. Like I said, they hated him. I'm sure that won't come back to bite him or whatever, so that doesn't matter. He said to them, listen to this dream that I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to it. What? That's kind of a weird dream. First off, let's sit here for a second, all right? Has anyone ever had a friend... Has anyone ever had a friend who's like, dude, I had the craziest dream last night? Has anyone ever told you that, right? I don't really care. I'm just going to be honest. Look, I'll say it. I'm sorry. Look, okay, because here's the thing. Let me tell you why. Because here's what's going to happen. You can say, dude, I had the craziest dream last night. And then you're going to go on. 1, it's not going to be important. 2, it's not going to matter. Do those mean the same thing? Probably. 3, we're going to forget about it in 20 minutes. 4, we're never going to talk about this again. And then 5, I'm going to have to sit through you telling a 20-minute story that goes something like this. Okay, yeah, well, no, it was actually after... Sorry, I'm having a hard time remembering. Because it was like actually in between this part and this part that, no, because it was kind of, it doesn't make any sense. I don't care when you have a dream, right? I'm just saying. I'm sorry. Like, if you have a dream, I'll sit there and listen if you buy me a drink from Blue Hill. But anyway, right? So Joseph, he had a dream, and then he goes and he tells his brothers. So his brothers have to listen to him telling a dream, which is super fun, as I could tell by all y'all's laughing. No one likes to do that. They had to sit through a dream. On top of that, they hated him. Okay, fair enough. And on top of that... What was the dream about? Joseph was saying, we were binding these sheaves of grain, and mine stood upright, and all of y'all's gathered around and bowed down to it. A weird dream, kind of, just being honest, right? And you had all these layers, and I could see why the brothers were a little bit frustrated, but hey, fair enough. So let's go ahead and keep reading. Genesis 37, now in verse 9, we read this. Then Joseph had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. Listen, he said, I had another dream, and this time the sun and the moon and the 11 stars were bowing down to me. 11 stars, he had 11 brothers, but the sun and the moon, what exactly does that mean? Does anyone want to take a guess? His parents. Another kind of a weird dream, but let's think about it, right? Let's give Joseph the benefit of the doubt. Let's put ourselves in Joseph's shoes, or sandals, or Birkenstocks, whatever he was wearing that day. Or hey dudes, maybe. He had these dreams that these sheaves of grain, the sun, the moon, the stars, they were bowing down to him. What exactly did that mean? Well, think about it. See, God was trying to communicate with Joseph. Joseph, I'm going to use you to do something great. Right? I mean, think about it. If he has a dream of people bowing down to him, God is promising Joseph, someday I'm going to do something amazing through you. Someday you're going to do something great. Joseph, I promise you that I have an amazing plan for your life. Right? Are we following so far? Joseph gets these dreams where things are bowing down to him. That's a promise from God saying, Joseph, I have something for you, and it's going to be amazing. God's giving Joseph this vision, this amazing dream, this promise of something great that is yet to come in his life. Awesome. That sounds great. That sounds awesome, right? So let's go ahead and keep reading, and let's see what happens, man, with this awesome dream. It doesn't end up so awesome. So Joseph, he's at the house one day with his father. All of his brothers are out. They're working with the sheep. And his father's like, hey, Joseph, can you go over and check on your brothers for me? And Joseph is like, yeah, sure, no problem. So he walks over, he finds where his brother's attending sheep, and he's like, what's up, jabronis? How's it rocking? Right? Just kind of checking in on y'all. And with that, let's go ahead. Let's read what happens after Joseph checks in on his brothers. So when Joseph came to his brothers, when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe that he was wearing, and they took him and they threw him in a cistern. The cistern was empty. There was no water in it. So here's what happens is Joseph goes out to check on his brothers, and when they see him, the brothers are kind of like, hey guys, there's Joseph. Dad's not here. There's a hole. And they all agreed, let's throw him in, right? So that's what they do. They strip him of his robe, and then they throw him into this hole, which is kind of crazy, right? And so some of y'all may be familiar with the story. You know that he doesn't stay in the pit for too long, right? But I can't help but wonder if maybe he was in there just long enough to question. To quote the wise Kendall Sims, maybe he said something like this. Hey, God, I thought that you promised that you had a plan. So why am I in this pit right now? I mean, think about it. Like, Joseph was given these dreams that something amazing would happen in his life. But then all of a sudden now he finds him in a pit that his own brothers threw him into. That's kind of a unexpected interruption, you would think. But hey, maybe it gets better, right? Maybe it gets better. Let's hope it does. Let's hope it does. See, his brothers, they kind of come to their senses. And his brothers, they all gather around with Joseph in a hole down there somewhere. And they're all like, guys, guys, what are we doing? That's our brother. We can't just throw him in a hole. Let's sell him. So if we're gonna get rid of him, let's at least make some money off of it, right? So that makes sense to me. But I mean, hey, does anyone here have siblings? Yes, good. Okay, look. I have a brother. I would never think about selling my brother, okay? Why are you laughing? I'd throw him in a pit, but I wouldn't sell him. I wouldn't think about selling him, right? But that's what his brothers do. And so they take him out of the pit, they go, shoop, and then they send him off, right? And they send him to this caravan that's traveling to Egypt. And so then Joseph is now brought to Egypt, and he's sold as a slave to a man named, does anyone know the name? Don't whisper it, come on. Potiphar. Sorry, thanks for jogging my memory, I forgot. So he's sold to a man named Potiphar. That's lower than the pit, man. Probably not literally, but that's lower than the pit. Because now, get this, he was promised something amazing. God told him, I got some great plans for you. But now he's a slave. In a foreign country, a foreign culture, a foreign language, trying to tell him to sweep the floor. They got to play some weird charades just to, you know what I mean? This is not a good situation to be in. And if I was Joseph, it's at this point that I might start to lose hope, maybe. Let's read what happens. Genesis 39. Let's check in on Joseph in Potiphar's house. The Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered. Oh, hey, I told y'all things would be looking up soon, right? Come on. And he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. Joseph put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. Hey, things are getting better, right? I don't know if y'all heard that section. Basically what it's saying is that Joseph was a slave, but now he's worked his way up, right? He's now been promoted and promoted and promoted. He's right under Potiphar. He's doing great. He's successful. He's consistent. He shows up on time. He's hardworking. He's incredibly hot. Actually, yeah, kind of. That might be the New Jared translation, but in the NIV, chapter 39, verse 6, I kid you not, let me tell you what it says. Now Joseph was well built and handsome. If the Bible says that. And after a while, Potiphar's wife took notice of Joseph and said, "Come to bed with me." Sorry, I don't know why I said it like that. So everything was going amazing, right? He's getting promoted. Everything under his care is successful and prospering. And Potiphar's wife notices, hey, that's a good-looking dude, right? And she goes over, "Come to bed with me." It's not the best pickup line. I wouldn't recommend that now. And it didn't work back then either. Because Potiphar's wife, she runs up to Joseph, and she wants to break visitation, right? And so what happens is Joseph sprints out the door. He's like, "Not today, Satan." And so he takes off, right? He's out. And Potiphar's wife, probably embarrassed. I mean, I don't know, ladies, would you? I'd be embarrassed, man. If you say, "Come to bed with me," and a dude just sprints like that. Anyway, sorry. I get distracted easily when I preach. So Joseph takes off, and Potiphar's wife, she's now embarrassed, and then she's like, "Hey, he tried to sleep with me." And guess how that ended out? Well, our boy Joseph doesn't end out too well for him. Because what ends up happening is that he gets thrown into prison. I talked for that long. My goodness. Got to find myself in the notes. Everything was going well for Joseph until now. Because now he finds himself in prison. Why? Because of a false accusation, because of a lie. He now finds himself in prison. If there is one thing worse than being a slave in a foreign country, it would probably be to be in prison in a foreign country. And we're not talking some kind of nice jail cell. They just put you in there and waited for you to die, basically. So if I was Joseph, if I had somehow held on to hope before, if I had somehow remembered God's promise and kept on going and staying faithful, if somehow I had held on to that hope, man, would it be hard to do that now? I mean, just think about it. When God said, "Joseph, I have an amazing plan for you," and then he goes to the pit, and then he goes to Potiphar's, and now he's in prison. God, I thought you had a plan. And you might be sitting there thinking, hey, Jared, it's okay. I heard this story in Sunday school. It's okay. Hey, in prison, he meets a man, and then everything, he lives happily ever after, right? Not really. Because Sunday school leaves out what I think is a very important detail. Let me set the stage for you. See, in prison, he does meet two men. One, a chief baker who used to cook for Pharaoh, and two, a chief cupbearer who it says that he used to hold Pharaoh's cup. It's a cool job, not gonna lie. It probably wasn't. And he meets them in jail, and both of these men have these dreams. And the cupbearer goes up and says, Joseph, I had this dream. What do you think it means? And Joseph says, hey, I got good news. Your dream is saying that you're gonna be promoted and you're gonna take your job back in Pharaoh's kingdom. And he's like, cool. Sorry. And the chief baker comes up to Joseph and says, hey, man, I love that you were so positive about his dream. I had a dream too. He told him about his dream, and Joseph was like, yeah, you're going to die. So get impaled is the biblical language there. And that's exactly what happens. That's exactly what happens. He meets these two men, and I know what you're thinking, like, he is right on the cusp. He is about to find that plan that God had for him. Hold on. Because right before the chief cupbearer goes back to working for Pharaoh, Joseph goes up to him and says, hey man, before you go, just do me one favor. Remember me when you get to Pharaoh. And the chief cupbearer is like, dude, of course, man. After what you did for me, of course I'll remember you. And he forgot. And he started working for Pharaoh. Let me go ahead and read the text, and let's see what happens next. Pharaoh restored the chief cupbearer to his position, so that once again he put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he impaled the chief baker, just as Joseph had said to them in his interpretation. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. That's the end of Genesis chapter 40. Allow me to start Genesis chapter 41. When 2 full years had passed. Are y'all following along with that? 2 years is a long time. 2 years is a long time to spend in prison. 2 years is a long time to spend when you feel like God broke a promise. 2 years is a long time to feel alone. 2 years Joseph spent in prison. Do you know how hard it is to keep your faith 2 years in prison? I mean, if I was Joseph, I'd probably be having a few choice words with God at this point. Some of those probably being at some point, God, can I be honest? Do you even exist? That's what I'd probably be thinking if I was in the prison after what God spoke to Joseph and he gave him this dream and nothing has gone right for Joseph so far. I'd be sitting there in prison saying, God, are you even real? I know that perfect Christians, they don't have to deal with this stuff. That's okay. But real ones do sometimes. Real ones sometimes have doubts. Real ones sometimes will feel alone. Real ones sometimes will encounter a hardship that doesn't make sense. And you're left to wonder, why? God, I thought that you had a plan. You promised that you had a plan. So why am I in prison right now? Is it hot in here? Or is it just the Holy Spirit? Am I right? And we get to these seasons. I've been in these seasons. And I've talked to God, and I've just said, God, hey, dude, no, your plan is ruined. Right? Like I thought that I knew what God's plan was, but then this happens, and this happens, and then this happens, and it just seems to shatter. And I get to a point, and I'm like, God, your plan is ruined. God, come on. This piece was supposed to go here, and then this piece was supposed to go here, and this piece was supposed to go here, and eventually it would look like a Lego car. what is this? Right? Like, I don't know what this is right now, but I thought this wasn't your plan. I say, God, your plan is ruined. And he says, no, yours is. I'll slow it down a little bit. We get to these seasons where it seems like nothing makes sense, like nothing is coming together. Like maybe once we had a vision, but now all of a sudden it seems to come crashing down around us because nothing seems to be working out. And we think, God, I thought that you had a plan, but right now it seems to be ruined. And it's in these moments that if we go to God and we say, God, your plan is ruined, that's when he can reveal to us, no, your plan might be ruined, but mine is right on schedule. If I was Joseph, I'd be thinking, God, I thought that you promised that you had something great. Then why did I have to get thrown in the pit? Then why am I in prison? Wait, hold on. Hold on. You want to know the reason why he was in prison? Because he met this man who was the chief cupbearer for Pharaoh, and then he interpreted his dream, and the chief cupbearer goes on to work for Pharaoh, and 2 full years pass, and those were 2 hard years. But you know what happens after the 2 years had passed? Pharaoh has a dream. God, why am I in prison right now? Because that's exactly where I need you to be. God, I thought that you had a plan. I do. Just wait. Because after 2 years pass, Pharaoh has a dream, and the chief cupbearer is like, oh, dude, I knew a guy, right? And so they pick up Joseph from the cell that he was in, left there to die. They pick him up, they take him to Pharaoh, and he tells Pharaoh exactly what his dreams meant. And then Joseph was promoted to be second in command of Egypt. A position where, guess what? His family bowed down to him. And where do we hear that before? Where do we hear that notion before? We heard it at the very beginning of the story. When God said, Joseph, I'm going to give you a dream. When God said, Joseph, I have a plan for you. When God said, Joseph, I promise I'm going to do something great through you. He said, there will be stars, sun and moon, sheaves of grain. They will bow down to you. And then all these years later, sorry, going through puberty. And then all of these years later of hardship, and obstacles, hold on, I'll get back to that in a second. All of these years later, when nothing seems to be going right and the plan just keeps on getting ruined, no, it was right on schedule. Why? Because at the beginning of the story, God promised. And God has an undeniable track record of coming through on his words. The pit, Potiphar's prison. To Joseph, those seemed like obstacles. You know what I mean? Joseph probably had a very different idea of his life trajectory. When God said, Joseph, I'm going to give you this dream of people bowing down to you, Joseph probably thought, that's great. I'm going to go point A to point B. And God said, I have a whole alphabet for a reason, my friend, right? And he took him through the cycle. The pit, Potiphar's prison, those seemed like obstacles to Joseph. To God, those were opportunities. The pit, Potiphar's prison, to Joseph, it might have seemed like a punishment. God saw it as a pathway. A pathway to what? A pathway to what? Everything that seemed to get in the way of God's plan for Joseph, where was that leading him? Exactly where God promised that he would take him. When? At the very beginning of his story. Because when God gives you a promise, when God has a plan, there is nothing on heaven or on earth or in all creation that can get in the way. I don't care what kind of pit you fall into. I don't care what kind of prison you're locked up in. What we see is an obstacle and a punishment. God sees as an opportunity and a pathway to get you where he wants you to be. So let me go back to one of the questions that I started with. Why? God, Why? Come on, someone in this room has asked God why before. God, why was I thrown in the pit? Why was I sold to slavery? Why was I thrown into prison? Why? Because if he was never thrown into the pit, he would have never been sold as a slave. And if he was never sold as a slave, he would have never met a man named Potiphar. And if he would have never met a man named Potiphar, he would have never met Potiphar's wife. That seems like a bad thing. Is it though? Hold on. Because if he never would have met Potiphar's wife, he never would have been thrown in prison. I don't want to be thrown in prison. But hold on. This is God's plan in action right now. If he was never thrown in prison, he would have never met the chief cupbearer. And if he would have never met the chief cupbearer, he would have never met Pharaoh. And if he would have never met Pharaoh, he would have never lived up to the plan that God had for him. So why did this happen? Because that's exactly what God needed to happen. And so in your season of why, in your season of I don't see where this fits into the bigger picture, in your season of this plan is ruined, hold on. Keep the faith. Because God's plan is right on schedule. How about I start to wrap up here? Seems like y'all have had enough. A word came to mind as I was going through this story, and that word was faithfulness. And you can see that through two angles. Which one should I start with? Let's start with God's faithfulness. In the pit, when it felt like Joseph was alone, when he didn't know what he was doing. At Potiphar's, when he was sold into slavery and started to lose hope. And in prison, where he was left there to die. Where was God? Right there. He probably couldn't feel that God was there in that moment. Because sometimes when we're going through hardship, it's tough to see God. Sometimes when the clouds are out, we can't see the sun. It doesn't mean it's not there, though. And so just because you can't see God in this moment, it doesn't mean he's not there. Maybe he's just working. Maybe he's just working. He was for Joseph. Why? Because God is faithful to his word, to his plans, and to his promises. But also you think about the faithfulness of Joseph. I mentioned a few times, if I was him, I might have lost hope a few times. If I was Joseph, I don't know if I could have held on. But in the pit, he kept the faith. And at Potiphar's, he kept the faith. And in prison, he kept the faith. And so in your life, when the waves get high, keep the faith. When the fire blazes 10 times hotter, keep the faith. When you got bills to pay and you don't know how to pay them, keep the faith. When everything seems to be falling apart around you, keep the faith. When you're in a season of asking God, why has this happened to me? Keep the faith. Hold on. Why? Because God is holding out his hand. Because he is not far. He's right there. Let me close with this. Keep the faith. Because God's not letting go of you. So don't let go of God. Number 2, the pieces aren't falling apart. They're coming together. It might not look like a race car right now. God has a funny way of getting from point A to B. It's not falling apart. It's coming together. And point 3, when you look around and it feels like there's no hope, look up.